So the fourth field of conversation is called collective creativity. It's based on speaking from what is moving through. And it's often connected to a moment of transformative stillness, presencing, where we begin to sense and actualize emerging future possibilities, and where, as a group, we move into a state of flow, into a state of co-creative flow, where we no longer can say, is it your idea, is it my idea, and where collectively, through our engaging with each other, something new is being born that wasn't there before. And that's why this notion of co-creating and shifting our sense of who we really are, connecting more with our deeper sources of inspiration, of energy, and of self, is a defining feature here. And later on in the lab, we'll kind of hear more examples of that. It may sound a little abstract at this point, which is fine, but it will become more apparent and more clear the more deeper we go on this journey here together. How can we know whether we have been operating on level 1, 2, 3, or 4? Here is a little bit a distinction, or maybe a little some criteria that you could use when you want to monitor your own level of, on which level of conversation you're really operating. So when you come out of a conversation and everything that you expected to see actually did happen, that's a good indicator that you have been downloading, that you have been part of a conversation where nothing new really happened. So everything that did happen was fitting into your old frameworks, your old expectations. When you come out of conversation that resulted in some new aspects, some new data points, some new viewpoints that you weren't aware of before, that is challenging some of your own assumptions, that's a good indicator for having been in a good debate, in a good conversation that is exposing you to some new realities outside there that you weren't aware of and that are challenging some of your own assumptions. So that's level 2. When you come out of a conversation that not only is exposing you to new data that is challenging your assumptions, but that really allows you to see reality through another perspective, through another pair of eyes, and to begin to see yourself through the eyes of another, through the experience of another stakeholder. That's a good indicator for level 3. So level 3 is you come out of a conversation with a new perspective, not just with new data points. And then lastly, how would you know whether or not you have been part of a level 4 conversation? There are a couple of key indicators. One is energy. Your energy is way up. Your level of inspiration is much higher. And also, a level 4 conversation means that something that wasn't quite there yet before is in the process of being born. So it's it could be a breakthrough idea. It has to do with profound innovation, which, however, often feels like a birthing process. So something is being born or being created as a result of that. That's the third criteria. And the fourth one is that I leave, and that's maybe the main criteria. So here's the main criteria. That if you leave that conversation and you're still the same person that entered the conversation 1 or 2 or 3 hours before, then you have not been part of a level 4 conversation. Level 4 conversation is when the person that leaves the conversation is someone different to the person that entered the conversation. And what I mean with that is that you're different in terms of you're more your real self. You're more closely connected to who you really are and who you're becoming, who you could become tomorrow. So you are more closely connected to your real journey and to your emerging self rather than to the person that entered that conversation that was more kind of formed by was more formed or informed by your journey of the past. So those are like 4 criteria that apply to this 4th level of conversation. And later this week, we will introduce you to an assessment tool that actually gives you the possibility to use these criteria and apply them onto your own self-monitoring so that you self-assess, okay, when was it kind of today when I actually operated on level 3 or 4, and what percentage of my time am I actually spending on level 1, on level 2, on level 3, on level 4 type of conversation. And we have found that here at MIT, kind of in the U Lab, students that use this type of tool, this type of self-assessment on a daily level, have significantly improved their capacity to operate on the entire spectrum of conversational fields rather than being stuck in 1 or 2 levels. High-performing teams are not teams that are only operating on 1 level. High-performing teams are teams that can move across the entire spectrums of fields of conversation, while low-performing teams are stuck on 1 or 2 levels. So what we try to do is to increase your capacity to really operate across the entire spectrum as needed. And now we would like to look at some more real-world examples. So we want to go next door to our friend Dana Cunningham, who heads the MIT Community Innovators Lab, and listen to some of her stories, how she is kind of putting some of these concepts into practice, into her own work, and in the context of her own life.